All right, so Deer Society Live, this is a clip Andy Orr brought in. We got him up here filming this week. We're going to break some stuff down. It's pretty open forum, and just all about education. So start out, we got a clip November 11th, a few years back. Pretty incredible encounter here. As the buck approaches, you can hear him doing a lot of loud tending grunts, and maybe Andy can kind of walk through kind of the basic setup here and what's going on.
Yeah. Maybe you pause it for a second. I'll get a basic scenario of what was going on. We came into this stand early before first light, and then the buck starts talking up the draw a little ways. I saw some does coming. We're in the tree all set up, ready to go, and I realized, hey, you know, something's about to happen here. I can hear it's a mature buck. This is not a small deer. This is an upper age structure buck, and it's just getting light enough that we can see who he is and try and figure out, you know, is this a buck maybe I want to shoot or whatnot. And he's coming up through the draw right now. Right as this happened.
So you were hearing him back in the valley early on when you first got set up, that there was commotion back there?
Well, I heard him croaking.
Oh.
He's talking loud, doing like a tending grunt, just talking to those does. There's 3 does out in front of him here.
What are your, oh yeah, you can hear him right there.
Yeah, you can hear it.
At this point, I realized this is the buck I know, named War Machine, 7-year-old buck. I mean, just a really beautiful deer that I'd really like to shoot if I can.
So he's on a doe right now, and she came in from a different...
She's in between him and the tree stand, yeah. She just bumped her around.
And this is November 11th, so what does that tell you about what's going on here as far as the rut?
She's got to be really, really close to being in heat. Doesn't look like she's fully there. He's not right behind her, but he's really close. And here's the only shot I had for just a minute. I had a 29-yard shot at him, and he turned and peeled out. Yeah, when he was standing there, I cut. But there was a little bit of brush in the way, and Ryan and I are communicating about the camera, trying to figure out, you know, I'm waiting. Does Ryan have him for sure? I'm thinking that this whole thing's going to unfold for minutes at a time in this food plot. You know, I mean, this doe is the 3 does have come in. There's 2 does over to our left. I'm figuring he's not going anywhere. You know, he's going to be here for a few minutes. It took him almost 5 minutes to work up through that oxbow and get into the food plot. So I didn't expect him to leave immediately.
He just coughed right there.
Yeah.
Stop it for a second, Jay. So if I'm going back to the beginning of this, and when we first looked at this clip, I thought maybe there would be a hot estrus doe. I didn't even know there was any doe in the area until he kicked that one up. And so I'm just thinking back on my own experience. I hear that aggressive, deep, like really clicky grunting, you know, that guttural, and it's multiple times, you know.
All the way up through the draw.
Yep, and that's what we call, it's been called tending grunts. You know, the sound itself is the guttural sound of a croak, which is that real long breeding type grunt, you know. So we just want people to kind of understand it's that guttural, that and he just continues to do it. So you think about that now when you're calling, okay? If you're trying to create that illusion or that scenario, this is what's happening real time. So how many times do you think that deer grunted?
25.
25 times. There you go. So it's like, well, people say, well, how many times do I grunt? It depends on what the scenario is. What are you trying to create as a scenario?
Yeah.
Okay.
Every animal's different, and this particular buck, in my opinion, he's talking to those does, letting them know, I'm right behind you, I'm coming, I'm right here, don't get distracted, it's me you want. You know, he's just literally just coming up that draw going, just letting them know, hey, I'm right behind you, I'm coming, I'm not pushing you, but I'm right here.
And at first I was trying to figure out, is he on a hot doe that had walked through earlier? Is he already smelling that estrus scent? But he doesn't have that head down like that, and he's not pushing really, really hard.
Right. Not what we call bulldogging.
Right, exactly. He's not bulldogging her, you know. But he did bump her. And then you got to see it in real life, and maybe we could talk about that at a different time. We'll catch a doe, but, you know, the doe itself wasn't bedded down just totally trying to tuck away like a frightened turtle. She was just kind of like,
right.
You know.
She paused. I think the does, you know, a lot of times they're a little intimidated by these bigger bucks. They may not have even had an encounter like that before with a mature buck like that, and they don't know exactly what to expect. They may or may not know him. It might be their first year breeding, and they just don't know what the heck's going to happen. So they're a little scared, and you could tell that doe was definitely, she came into the plot and was just kind of like, ooh, she just sat there.
And so he's tending those does. And now we're going to go into this next thing. And we heard that deer cough. Okay. So what's your thought on the cough?
Well, yeah, first of all, so the buck slipped through your window here, your shot window, and you gave him a couple doe estrus pleats. So what were you doing there? And then we'll talk about the cough, because he does that right after. What were you trying to pull off?
Right,
with
because
him?
Excuse me, you got doe bleats ahead of time before the buck came in? Is that what you're saying? Or are you talking about right now?
Yeah, when he first came into the plot, he had those 3 does ahead of him, and so I was not interested in bleeding or communicating at that time, because they're coming towards us already, and I'm thinking, hey, I'm going to freak one of those does out, and they're going to.
So now that he's bumped her out, now you're doing those doe bleats here. This is what we're talking about.
Right, because these does split. One of them went back into, hooked around and went back into this heavy cover. 2 of them are off to my left, and I'm trying to confuse him that, hey, maybe, there's the doe you want is up here. He's heading out. I'm figuring, hey, I've got a little window here when I might be able to interest him with an estrus bleat. You can see he turned to it, but he wasn't. With a doe moving right in front of him, he locked on her.
Okay, so did you take us back to the doe bleats maybe a little bit here, or they can rerun it, and then just let's play it out from there for a while and see what he does.
Yeah, it's right here. He pushes her up into the thicket, and then he coughs.
You hear that cough?
Yeah.
That's you brought that up a second ago. Maybe pause that for a sec.
Yep.
A really interesting point about that, one thing I'd love to talk about is just how often you actually do hear deer cough in the woods, but you don't really recognize it. When I used to hunt, I never really picked up on it, but nowadays anymore, if you hear what you thought was maybe a cough, 9 times out of 10 it is a cough, and it's a deer, and it's somewhere close to you. So really, really try and pay attention to that sound. It's a weird sound that's kind of hard to isolate, but you hear deer in the timber do it. I hear them a lot now do it, now that I'm kind of tuned into it or whatever.
That's a great point. And
it's an important sound to pick up on, because now hey, I got deer close,
And he got me tuned in on a sound in the woods that, I'd heard a lot and I didn't pay much attention to it. And that's those, the squirrels. Okay. When you're hearing that squirrel in the distance and, you're not seeing anything going on in your area, but it's, that's probably where that deer is going to come from, whatever. All of a sudden you'll hear it. And it doesn't stop. Okay, it continues to go. Turn it on. I mean, turn on the radar. You keep your eyes open. Watch what's going on. There's a lot of times that they're seeing a deer or a buck coming through at that time, and that's the perfect signal for you to think about.
Yeah.
There you go. Now, if you open your mind to this cough, same thing. You'll hear that sound. You're like. And then if you don't pay attention to it, you won't know what's going on.
Right. It's very short, and you don't always pick up on it. And if they do it 2 or 3 times, you might get it. But try and
that was just once.
Right. You'll just a lot of times you just hear that one. You'll hear him cough a little bit. And
what was that?
There.
He just coughed right there. So you gave him 2 doe estrus bleats. He kind of fades off here. We'll kind of watch that, and then
I did it till he heard it. See, I wanted to make sure. And the second time he indicates to me, "Hey, I heard it," but you can see. There he coughs again, heavy, and coughed up something, and he's chewing on it. And then he decides, I'm going to follow my doe. So
I'm going to make a point on that. As soon as he recognized the deer heard and the deer looked at him, that's when you can't be moving or calling at all.
You got
because now
freeze.
You notice them ears were pointed right back where that sound came from. If you make a sound right there, that deer will pinpoint exactly where you're at, and you're done. So
you'll pay a lot of attention as their head spins. You got to, by the time they lock onto your actual area, you better be done with all sounds and movement, because anything your hands are doing, they'll get you.
And even call deflection, it is very risky at that time. Even if you're deflecting that sound down behind you,
you can't.
You're still above it, and there's still sound waves coming from up above, and that's
the only exception to that would be, if the deer's 150, 200 yards away, you might be able to get away with it. But even there, they can sometimes nail you. But when they're within 50 like this, you got no margin for error. It's about to get ugly if you move at all.
My rule is all the time, whenever I call to a deer, I never call to a deer looking at me. And it's just a personal preference, because the thought process of a deer is going on at one thing at a time. It's not multiple thinking like us. Okay. So the deer is like, Okay, he's thinking about them does. Now all of a sudden you did the doe bleats. Boom, he changed. Now he's thinking about that. And they get so intense and tuned into that. They're thinking of one thing at a time. So if I know that I've called and he's recognized me, he's thinking of what I did, that's it. And then as soon as I see him lose his attention to me, whether it's another cough and chewing on the leaf or whatever it is, the flicker of the tail, I know he's going to move. That's when I get ready to do the next piece of language if I deem that I need to do something else. So that's just a strategy when it comes to actual calling.
So Andy called at this buck. He pushes the doe off, and the doe eventually moves off. Well, now this buck just came in, circled, and he's looking basically for your calling now. So what's kind of the next move? How's this scenario playing out?
Right. So I'm frozen up, just waiting for a potential shot down. He might move down to our right. He might move to our left. I'm expecting, he's easing up towards us. He's heard that calling and followed that other doe and realized, hey, she doesn't smell right. So I'm going to go back. Maybe that one I heard call in estrus, maybe I'll go get her or one of the other two. And at this point, I'm really expecting that I might get a shot in the next, 10 seconds or so. I mean, I was really on high alert because he's easing right into the food plot right towards us. And I thought, boy, we really got him here.
Is that running video?
No, I'll push play. But he's looking in, he's smelling, he's licking his lips a little bit. He's not eating anything.
You see using the standing corn for some cover to sneak in and kind of check. And I thought, boy, I mean, he's at about 30 yards here, just about to give me a good shot. And he hears one of the other does move in the cover and he just kicks him out.
And no shot there, or is that just outside of your comfort zone, or what's?
Yeah, I had a shot there, but this is a deer I know really well, and I just don't like risking longer shots, and just not in my comfort zone. I'm not.
You're right.
Yeah, I'm just not big on longer shots. All the whitetails I've ever killed, I've never shot a deer with a bow past 25 yards.
It's amazing how quickly they can duck an arrow at 30 yards.
It is, and when you know an animal like that, and it's a deer I really, really want to kill, I want to make sure I do it right, and I would be really, really heartbroken if I crippled him because I rushed or hurried a shot. And at the end of the day, you kind of got to be in the right mood to want to kill a deer, and I wasn't. All this happening, it was amazing, and I just wasn't quite there. I just wasn't in quite the right frame to I've got to take him right here at 30. I thought this situation is still developing, and I was just kind of, I'll watch and see what happens.
It's good not to be in panic mode. I mean, that's a tough thing when you get that much adrenaline, going through your body.
I was excited for sure, and like I said, it's a deer I know well, and I just wasn't interested in risking, hitting him a little low or whatever. I practice all the time out at 50 yards. That's where I do most of my practicing. But
and you can see him come in there.
Yeah, talk a little bit about the buck, his rack. You knew he was 7 years old, huge bases, and then a little bit what happened later in the season.
Yeah, he doesn't. You can tell he doesn't have. It's not a terribly high scoring buck, but to me, a super cool buck with lots and lots of character all around his bases. And this is a buck I used to see all the time, and just a really, really neat animal. After this happened, I ended up finding this buck dead on the property in the hinge cutting that we had done. We found his sheds, and then I was looking for sheds in a different area in those hinge cuts, and found him just laying there dead. I don't know what happened, but it was definitely a heartbreaker for me. It was a really neat deer, and I would have much rather, had a good encounter with him and put a great shot on him, but it didn't work out. So.
And, I mean, when you find a dead deer too, you think, oh, somebody else wounded up. That's not the truth all the time. That deer could have got hit by a car. He could have got sick and died. Could have got into a fight. Infection. I mean, there's
parasites, all kinds of things that happened to him. There wasn't a mark on him that I could tell as to what would have caused his death. I have no idea, but it was a heartbreaker.
Bummer.
Of course, that makes you look back at oh, should I have taken that 29-yard shot? But neat deer.
There you have it. What was his name? Dagger or
War Machine.
War Machine.
War Machine.
Mm-hmm.
That's the breakdown on War Machine.
It was a really, really neat encounter for sure.